Today's webinar series is an exciting one. We are talking about scope of work process changes. Now, these improved processes were put in place to essentially keep the pipeline moving forward. So you'll see some adjustments here that we'll talk about in a few moments. My name is Mark Lennox. I am the Product Education Manager at Freedom Forever and the host of our webinar series. Let's get to the agenda for today's presentation. So we'll start by defining the scope of work, what it is, how it operates. Then we'll talk about changes to the old scope of work policy and talk about what's new. We'll go over types of scope of work, some of the new denial options when approving or denying a scope of work, and then sales rep responsibilities for moving projects forward. And then we'll wrap up, like all of our webinars, with a Q&A session. About halfway through this presentation, you will see a Q&A option pop up on screen. You can start submitting questions for this presentation, and after we are done with it, we will go to the Q&A and get those questions answered. So, scope of work defined. What stage of the process on the timeline is this, and how does it work? So, we define scope of work as a step in Freedom Forever's installation process that ensures all parties are aligned on the final product being delivered to the end customer. Now, projects will only be put in scope of work confirm if after project review, first, the project is deemed buildable by Freedom Forever, and number two, the scope of work is not auto approved. So we'll talk about auto approvals on the next slide, but we want to move through what happens if a project is not buildable. So if it's not buildable, a critical ticket will be triggered. Critical tickets are created when the following issues occur within a project. So if there is a low PPW or low production, that will be a critical ticket. If the project is disqualified, that's a critical ticket. If financing is not secured, i.e. loan documents have not been signed or there was no passive credit and the project was submitted. And the last is if a project is being built on an unpermitted structure on the property. So let's talk for a few moments about auto-approved scope of works. So after the final audit, if a project meets certain criteria, it will become an auto-approved scope of work that moves directly to the plan stage. Reps don't have to do anything. It moves directly to that stage. But if there is a change that's needed after being auto-approved, reps can request changes to the scope of work within 24 hours of that SOW being published. Remember, pricing-only changes will not incur a revision fee now. So if a scope of work is not auto-approved, that means one of the criteria on the right-hand side was triggered, prompting the standard SOW process. So after final audit, if the standard SOW criteria is triggered, the scope of work is sent to the sales rep for approval. Once it's sent to the rep, they have 24 hours to complete the approve or deny a scope of work process, or that project will be automatically moved to the plan stage. So some of the criteria that prompts the rep having to do the approval or denial is if there's significant layout changes, system size changes, there are more than $500 in unexpected adders, module changes, or contingencies, like a document needing to be signed, like a roof waiver or something like that. So what are the changes to the scope of work policy? So the new scope of work policy in May 2023, the scope of work policy changed. So this new SOW policy decouples the design, layout, and adder disputes from project pricing. The reason for this change is to improve install velocity. So moving forward, the SOW confirm stage will only be used to confirm design, equipment, and prep subcontractor work changes only. This means that pending contract pricing changes will no longer be held in the scope of work confirm stage or be moved to holding, except in the case of low PPW projects. So as a result of this change, pricing adjustments will no longer incur the post scope of work confirm revision fee. So here are some scope of work frequently asked questions. What are revision fees and when do they occur? Revision fees cover the additional expenses to rework a project after an SOW has been built and confirmed. These expenses include construction engineering labor, engineering stamps, permitting costs, permit runner labor, and other similar costs. All revisions to projects after scope of work confirmed that are not pricing changes will incur a revisions fee. This fee will be $1,000 once a permit is submitted and $500 otherwise. So what is the difference between an SOW with and without contingencies? A contingent SOW is a scope of work that is approvable once another document has been signed. In other words, they will be sent for approval but can only be moved forward to the plan stage once the associated document is signed. Typically, the document needed is like a roof waiver or a change order. What are the sales representative's responsibilities during scope of work confirm? So during the scope of work confirm, the sales representative is expected to reach out to the homeowner and confirm the design, equipment, and other prep work such as roof work that is to be completed. Sales representatives are expected to approve or deny the scope of work within 24 hours of it being presented if it was not auto-approved. So what support is available to sales representatives with questions or issues with their scope of work? Freedom Forever has a live SOW team available for assistance on pricing, adders, design, subcontract work, and other SOW-related questions. So this team can work through scenarios in real time to produce the desired scope of work for the sales representative, or otherwise discuss disputes and offer a second opinion on certain items within a scope of work. To reach this team, use the chat feature within Lightspeed and request a call from the live scope of work team. In addition to those scope of work changes, there's also a new feature in Lightspeed that includes the Aurora design in your scope of work. So Aurora designs made by the sales rep are now included in the SOW process. Navigate to the scope of work tab and you'll see a screenshot of the original design in that scope of work tab under Aurora scope of work. This is a major improvement. It allows the rep to see their original design and everything captured in Aurora during the sales process. This also solves the pain point of not being able to access the design post-sale. So this will allow reps to see everything they transferred over in the project generation process. So let's take a few minutes to talk about scope of work types. There are a few options for different types of scopes of work, and we'll talk about them now. So scope of work approved without contingency occurs when the sales representative actively approves the scope of work within Lightspeed and there is no scope of work contingency. So once that scope of work is approved, the project will immediately move to the plan stage. Once that's approved, the project will immediately be moved to the plan stage. A scope of work approved with contingency occurs when the sales representative actively approves the scope of work within Lightspeed and there is a contingency, like a signed document. Once approved, the contingent document will be sent to the homeowner for signature. From the point that the scope of work is presented, the sales representative will have 24 hours to get that document signed. Once signed, the project will be immediately moved to the plan stage. If the document is not signed within 24 hours, the project will be moved to holding until the document is signed. So let's talk about a scope of work denied, but with clear direction. This occurs when the sales representative declines the scope of work within Lightspeed and gives clear direction on what needs to change, or the scope of denial is coupled with a change order. When this occurs, Freedom Forever's team will review the denial reasons and change order, if applicable, and revise the project accordingly. In most instances, this will result in a new scope of work being created and the project will be moved to the plan stage. Now, a scope of work denied without clear direction is when it's denied and there is not enough direction provided by the sales representative on what changes need to be made. Freedom Forever's live SOW team will attempt to contact the sales rep to clarify the project changes that are needed. If contact is not made or otherwise clear direction is not given, the buildable project will be moved forward to the plan stage. Changes made after this point will incur a revision fee. The next type is no action taken by the sales rep without contingency. So if you get to the scope of work confirmed stage and no action is taken by the sales rep within 24 hours of the scope of work being presented, the project will move forward to the plan stage. And lastly, no action taken by the sales rep with contingency. So if no sales action is taken by the sales representative within 24 hours of the scope of work being presented, the project will move forward to the holding stage and a ticket will be opened for the contingent document. That project will remain in holding until that ticket is resolved. So what is an example of a denied scope of work with clear direction? So in this example on the right, the rep has denied the scope of work and provided clear direction for the live SOW team to correct. In this instance, because it only involved pricing, this project would move to plans while this is resolved. So you can see on the bottom right-hand side, under the notes, the rep made a clear direction for the live SOW team to resolve this and get the project moving forward. On the next example, we have a denied SOW without clear direction. In this example, the rep has denied the scope of work and has not provided clear direction for the live SOW team to correct. In this instance, because the response is vague and has no actionable items and the project is buildable, this project will move forward to plans as is if after contact by the live SOW team fails and nothing is resolved or there's no improvement in the vagueness of this denied SOW. So let's talk for a second about new denial options within the scope of work. When denying a scope of work in the dropdown, you'll see new options available to you for denying a scope of work. So with these new denial options, projects can progress to the plan stage if the denial reason is a pricing change. Pricing changes will no longer prevent the project from progressing forward. Again, to reiterate, when denying a scope of work for any reason listed, the most important aspect of that denial is to provide very specific details and actionable items for our live scope of work team. We talked about it in the previous slide. In the next slide on sales rep responsibilities, we'll address vague responses to SOW denials and make sure that this concept really hits home for the future of moving projects forward in this scope of work stage. So the last thing we're going to talk about prior to our Q&A session is moving projects forward. At this time, we are going to open up the Q&A so you can start submitting questions for the Q&A. We'll talk about sales rep responsibilities, and then we'll wrap up. So sales rep responsibilities for moving projects forward for the scope of work stage. The first thing we want to talk about is requesting change orders. If changes are needed related to equipment, production, pricing, or adders on contract, it is suggested that sales representatives submit a change order themselves and then reference that change order in the scope of work denial notes. So in this scenario, the sales representative will have 24 hours from the time the SOW was presented to get the change order signed. Once 24 hours elapses, a ticket will be opened and the project will move to holding until the ticket resolved, either by signing the change order or approving the SOW as presented. Once that change order is signed, the scope of work will be reworked and once again presented for approval. So what do we do in situations where change orders are in limbo? On some occasions, there will be outstanding change orders that have yet to be signed. These unsigned, unattended change orders are preventing a project from progressing through the pipeline. Moving forward, if that change order is the only thing blocking a buildable job, and there has been no action by the sales representative to complete the change order, it will be voided and the project will move to the plan stage. So again, we want to reiterate scope of work denials with vague reasoning. When denying a scope of work, please provide detailed notes and specific actionable instructions that can be resolved by our team. The more detail provided, the more likely that issue will be resolved. Our live SOW team works specifically to resolve issues with scopes of work. They are currently receiving an excess of denials for items that are not actionable. If they do not get the details necessary to resolve an issue, it cannot be corrected. It is the responsibility of the sales rep to provide as much detail as possible as to why that scope of work is being denied. Buildable jobs above baseline with vague reasoning or no direction for resolution will be pushed forward to the plan stage. So again, the call to action here, provide as much detail as possible when denying scope of work. Okay, we are at our Q&A session now. Let's begin. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us. Now is the time to submit questions for the Q&A. We are still waiting for some questions to come into our queue. Make sure if you have any questions about this process, we have Brian Malott, Rob Angel, and Noemi Santini here to answer your questions. So please submit them now, and we will get them answered in a nice, orderly fashion.
Mark, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, great. While we get some questions to come in, you mentioned early on here about the revision fee, and I know that there is a change there that you mentioned that I think is the first time most of you are hearing about it since we haven't updated the adder sheet for that yet. But that is the change to the revision fee. Excuse me, when plans have been, or excuse me, when permits have been submitted. At that point, we are paying the permitting fee, and there is additional expense paid by Freedom. So that's why we've removed the revision fee from pricing only changes, as there is minimal impact to Freedom. We don't have to rework plans there, but the give and take is that we are going to increase it because there is more, not necessarily more relative to before, but the ones that we do need to kind of get new permits for, pay a revision fee, whatever the case may be, those do incur a little bit more cost at that point in time. So that is coming soon. We haven't updated the adder sheet yet, but we will within the next probably day or.
Okay, our first question is from Dale. It says the PR offset percent in the SOW pertains to the relationship between the kilowatt hour production guarantee to the kilowatt hour estimated in the proposal, but does not relate to the kWh usage in the last 12 months of the homeowner. Is that correct?
Not sure if you're talking, Mark. We can't hear you.
I could hear that. I can take that question. So yes, that's correct. The scope of work percentage offset, yes, is related to the amount on the contract, not necessarily the customer's last 12 months of kilowatt hour usage. So that's the production guarantee is checking what is on the contract and then what our projected production is.
Okay, let's get the next question up. Next question is from Rigo. Can we get a quicker turnaround for SOW errors made by Freedom, such as layout design or wrong Aurora imagery uploaded? Noemi, do you want to take that one?
Yes. So we are currently working on being able to make more revisions to get the sales back to the sales reps a lot sooner. That should be coming out within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And you should be able to see a faster turnaround time.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Robert. And the slide's going to be available for later review. So this session, like all of our webinars, will be uploaded to the video library. We'll also send out the slide deck. After this presentation is complete, we will send out a recap email with a link to the recording and to the slide deck as well. So that's coming soon.
Yep, and then we also have a very detailed scope of work confirm help guide, which is in the Sales Resource Center as well. That's going to be in the Sales Resource Center in the folder that is Freedom Processes and Policies.
Okay, next question is from Eric, and he wants some further explanation on how the revision fees work. Rob or Brian, which one do you guys want to take that one? Can you guys hear me okay?
Rob, you there? You want to take that one? Got it. I'll take it. No worries.
Okay.
So who is charged on the revision fees? So when there's a revision fee, the revision fee will be placed on the scope of work. Oh, shoot. Rob, if you were talking, I did not hear you. Mark, were you able to hear Rob?
Negative. Not able to hear Rob at the moment.
Okay, got it. Neither am I. So yeah, so the revision fees go on the scope of work. And again, what we've done here is we have removed pricing only changes from the scope of work confirmation process. And so if you guys have a change that's needed, which is pricing only, you will no longer be charged a revision fee, which is a major win for the sales teams. Very happy to roll this out. If it's anything that's design related, then we will that will still incur a revision fee.
Thanks, Brian. Next question is from Lucas. And it is, where do we find the sold Aurora proposal in the Freedom Forever project? And is this retroactive and be added to previously sold projects? So if you are completing a project in Aurora, when you use Aurora's exit to CRM button and use the project generator, there will be under the scope of work tab an Aurora scope of work option where when you click on it, you'll see the layout design and the adders that everything that transferred over from Aurora. So as long as it's an Aurora project, you should be able to open up projects and see that Aurora scope of work tab within the scope of work tab of a project. Brian, do I have that right?
Correct. Yep. In the Aurora scope of work, in the scope of work tab, that's correct. And whether it's retroactive or not, I don't know the answer to that. I can check on it. I know moving forward, we're grabbing that screenshot of the design via API and dropping it in the Aurora scope of work. I don't know if it's retroactive. I'm guessing no, but I'll have to check on that.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we got you, Rob.
Yes, we can.
All right, sweet. Thank you. Yes, yeah. Sorry, was having some mic issues there. So we did roll out the Aurora scope of work few months back actually, so it should be in there for quite a while now. Just a quick note that there have been some scenarios where some of the data has not kind of transferred properly from Aurora. So if you see something fishy, I would say it's probably due to just a data transfer issue, not on a ton of projects, but just heads up. And then I think, as was mentioned earlier, we recently started getting the designs from there, so we're taking a screenshot of the design that was sold. And so you can make it much easier to compare to what was produced out of scope of work, out of project review.
Thanks, Rob. And I think this next one might be, we'll have to figure out who's going to take this one. How long does a sales rep have when a change order is in limbo before it is voided?
So I'll start. You can keep me honest here. So the change order, first of all, there was a change in the past couple of months where you can only have one change order outstanding at a time, which is a great change. That change order will be voided if the change order is the only blocker to schedule installation. So if we're ready to go and that's the only thing that's blocking the job from moving forward, it's at that point that we would void it and progress the project. And the thinking is that, it's going to be at least a couple of weeks in almost every single scenario from the time the scope of work got presented to when we're ready to schedule install. There's plenty of time to work through those. And, in the interest of speed, velocity, getting jobs installed, at the end of the day, we don't want to take a perfectly good, profitable, buildable job and kind of throw it away, put it into the ether. The piece that I'm sure I don't think we talked about here, but that is very important, is that there is a high correlation between change orders and cancellations, or change orders and jobs that kind of go into holding and never see the light of day again. And that is very, frustrating for all of us. It should be at the end of the day. So we're saying, hey, we have a good job. The change order had enough time to kind of get executed, get work through, but otherwise the job is good to go. We're going to go ahead and attempt to build it.
Thank you, Rob. And I have another one queued up here. One sec. So this question is, I've noticed that some sales use the SOW denial in order to put a project on hold while they reach out to the customer in order to, quote, resell them on certain things. What do you suggest those reps do in order to give them adequate time?
Yeah, I think I think the reality is, we want to minimize those as much as possible. Do that before you sell the job. I know that's not always possible in every single scenario, but we're trying to get to a point. I think we're very, very close to where, you should have a pretty high degree of certainty on what the home is going to look like pre-sale. Now that we've given the tools that we have with Aurora and made many, many improvements to that. Same deal with Sunrun. There's not a ton of scenarios where you should be very unsure pre-sale of kind of what's going on with the site. Obviously, there are those. We understand that. We recognize that. And I think this is one question that we've kind of tossed around a little bit internally and, may even potentially make some changes in the future. But I think ultimately, that is a small percentage of jobs. And from our standpoint, we don't want to slow jobs down when we don't have to. We don't want to, while we can kind of work things in parallel, we don't necessarily want to stop all the jobs just for a small percentage that might need changes later. So that is the spirit of these changes. To move jobs, and we need to move jobs faster and in more volume through to install. And we can work on a lot of these issues and conversations in parallel. But yeah, I mean, it's really in trying to get to more jobs installed and faster is really the spirit of these. So in this case, I would say, do your best to communicate exactly what it is you're looking to have changed. Have those conversations with your customers quickly. Be on top of your scope of works as quick as you can. Understand going into it, what the different options are for your customer, and try to have those conversations even prior to scope work confirmed. And just understand, hey, if it comes back like this, we're going to do this. If it comes back like that, we're going to do that. Have the options laid out to your customer. So it's a very quick conversation. Once you get it back, you can see what the real site looks like. You already know where you're going to go with that. And in the case where the customer isn't sure and you need to, kind of have those conversations, again, we're going to move forward with plans and permitting in the meantime. And if we need to do the rework, we will. But if the customer, by the time we're ready to install, kind of still isn't sure, then obviously they shouldn't install. And ultimately, we would stop the project at that point if the customer's not ready. So that's how that scenario would play out. Hope that answers.
This next question is from Frank. So throughout the presentation, we talked about providing as much detail as possible and giving our live SOW team actionable SOW changes that we can implement. So on our example, we gave a example of financing where, hey, it's change it to this financing product, change the price. Do we have any more, like what's some good examples that we could give everyone in the chat that is currently still here about other actionable SOW changes that folks would implement if they were denying an SOW?
Yeah, I can take that one. So when sales reps are denying the sales, what the account management team is looking for, they're looking for specific, like, are you looking for a specific PPW that you want us to calculate? So if you want $3.20, if you're specific in that, we can go ahead and we have calculators on our end that will let you know what you need to increase the price to. If you also are looking for a specific production, you can be specific with that, and then we can let you know how many panels you need to move, or if you're looking to kind of, you're trying to lower the cost, and you're willing to potentially remove some panels to get to that desired PPW, we can also do stuff like that. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I'll throw out another example too. Another one would be if you wanted to, to change the layout around a bit. Being as specific as possible is always helpful. So you can say like, please move 2 panels from roof 2 over to roof 1, or like from the west roof to the south roof. Things like that. The more detailed you can be with actionable notes, it's going to be a lot easier for the team to make the revision. Just saying something like add panels or move panels to the west, like how many panels, be as specific as possible so that someone just looking at the note for the first time and the design would know exactly how to make that change.
I think referencing roof planes by their azimuth is a really good idea. You can refer to the Aurora shade report to see the exact azimuths, or to missile design, however you want to do it. But so if it's on a 180-degree azimuth, hey, move modules from the 90-degree to the 180-degree, 2 mods from there to there, and then move 1 mod from the 180 to the 270, something like that. It's very specific, and there's no ambiguity on what you're talking about generally when you do it that way.
So before we jump back into the questions, there are a few popping in that are talking about reps with specific projects. So rather than us diving into the weeds about specific project questions you have, my suggestion would be to email those questions to projecteducation@freedomforever.com, and we'll make sure that we can find the answer for you regarding your specific project, or you can reach out to the live chat and get live SOW help from our live SOW team for these. So if there's questions about specific projects in the chat, we'll archive those. Just make sure that you shoot us an email or reach out to the live chat and get live SOW help and let that team help you out with it. And let me grab another question here. Next question is from Edwin. Do we know when all of these changes to the SOW process are going to be live, or when they'll be fully active? And I will say we will be sending out a lot of this training material, like Brian mentioned earlier in the presentation. We'll make sure that all of this is uploaded not only to Lightspeed, but emailed out to everyone. But when are all these things going fully into effect?
So the changes during scope of work confirm are live, both from a technology standpoint and an account management process standpoint. So in other words, the drop down of scope of work denials, and then the process to move.
They have lost you on your mic, Rob. Can everyone hear Rob?
No, I lost him too.
Okay, Rob, we're still having some audio issues. While that's going on, we will wait for a few more questions to pop in. We've pretty much reached the end of our queue. So if you have any specific questions about this SOW process or the presentation today,
And the revision fee changes are not live. The pricing changes, the $1,000, that is not yet live either. But most of them, again, scope work confirmed,